Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Good afternoon, it's Friday, it's 5 o'clock. You know what that means. No, it's not Cracker Jack, but this will be a cracking show. Boom, boom. It's the Locker Room here on Independence Live and IndieLive.radio. My name is Graham Duffy. You should all know that by now. We are hoping to be joined very shortly by the main man himself, Michael McHugh, who can get out of his bed. But for the meantime, I'm delighted to be joined, as always. I'm on fire tonight. I've not even started yet. But in the meantime, I am joined by the wonderful, wonderful host, and he's not paid me to say this, of the Our Country Thursday show, James E., and also the big Saturday show that you can hear tomorrow from 10 till 12. What a shameless plug. It's Mr. James E. James, how are you doing, pal?
I'm brilliant, mate, and it's so good to be back on the Locker Room with a professional, consummate professional like yourself, unlike the other chaps that sometimes appear on there with you.
Can somebody tell my wife that I'm a consummate professional? Because I don't think she believes that. And also delighted again to be joined by our regular sidekick and regular pundit, if you want to call him. No, it's not Michael Stewart, but it's Mr. Dave Smith, who's miles better. Dave, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Graham. Pleasure to be on with yourself again, James. Hope you're keeping well, pal.
Aye, good, mate. How are you doing? And congrats on the new job, by the way.
Aye, very well. Thank you very much. Yeah, all good here, apart from obviously a disastrous defeat for Aberdeen on Monday.
What a link that is.
Do you know what? See, on Monday night, right? I was actually planning to watch the English game that was on Sky that night, but because it was delayed because of the transport problems, I had got into the Aberdeen game, and I just was compelled to watch it from start to finish. And I have to say, I was rooting for Darvel all the way. Sorry, any Dons fans that might be listening.
Well, we're going to come on to that. We've got a lot to cover in these 2 hours. We are here till 7 o'clock, as always. And you can drop any comments on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. And we read all your comments out, but keep it clean. It is a family show. But yeah, I mean, we will obviously start with Monday night. And Darvel of the West of Scotland Premier Division, who defeated Aberdeen by 1-0. The goal from Jordan Kirkpatrick after 19 minutes to knock Aberdeen out of the Scottish Cup at the 4th round. Darvel, who are basically a 6-tier team. This is the worst result in Aberdeen's history. We'll get on to Aberdeen very shortly because that was the main story. But, James, I have to start with Darvel because they were absolutely outstanding. It wasn't a lucky result. They thoroughly deserved that win.
Well, do you know what? I had not actually seen them playing previously, but I'd read a lot about, how well they had done this season and, previous games in the Scottish Cup, how well they'd played, etc. So I was very surprised, that they were so good. But again, you kind of think, yeah, they've started off really well, but the Aberdeen professionalism, in inverted commas, is bound to kick in soon, but it didn't, and it didn't, and it didn't. So, I have to say, I was absolutely over the moon for Darvel. Shocking for Aberdeen fans, obviously, but great for Scottish football that, in inverted commas, a wee minnow team has done a giant killing.
I think what I actually liked watching the game is that not only was Darvel's pitch miles better than a Hampden for a junior pitch, they actually played some really good stuff. They were passing it from the back. They had runners in midfield. And again, I mean, you talk about work ethic. Their work ethic was incredible. You could tell the last 2 minutes they were getting really tired, but they blocked shots. They threw bodies in the line. I just thought they were absolutely outstanding. The job that Michael Kennedy's done there, the Darvel manager, has been incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about it, generally speaking, sort of part-time teams, when they come up against the full-time professionals, they do start off very well, but the fitness kind of does come through, or the lack of professional fitness, if you like. But do you know what? I think Darvel could hold their own against most teams.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, we're going to talk about Aberdeen very shortly, but I was just saying to James there, I mean, Darvel, that wasn't a lucky victory. They deserved every minute of that success they had. They played, as I said to James there, they actually played some very good football. They weren't lucky. They weren't fluky. They were very, very impressive.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't get the opportunity to catch the first half. I had a bit. I'll be honest with you, I had a bad feeling about this long before the ball was kicked on Monday. And I'm not the most negative of Aberdeen fans you meet, or I'm not the one that's the most critical of Aberdeen, but I did have a bad feeling because of a few things, because of how last Wednesday prevailed, the manner it prevailed, in terms of how everything. In terms of how easy it was for Hearts, in terms of them winning 5-0 last Wednesday evening. There was reports of bust-ups. That proved to be true because Jim Goodwin hinted, he didn't admit it, he hinted there'd been bust-ups in his press conference today. Obviously, Graham Shinnie didn't play on Monday, didn't even come on. He's one of the alleged culprits that fell out with Goodwin. So I wasn't surprised the slightest that there was a few more younger players playing, but also the spine of the team, not Shinnie, but the spine of the team in terms of players that would normally be playing, weren't playing. And Darvel just had that bit more desire, a bit more energy, a bit more enthusiasm about that play. And I was listening to what Mick Kennedy was saying in his team talk, because Darvel published it about an hour ago. And one of the main things that Mick Kennedy said in his team talk was, all the stuff we have in here, such as belief, love, respect, togetherness, quality, talent, they don't have that next door. Next door, I mean, in the Aberdeen changing room. And that just tells you the difference. Not the difference. Yeah, I would say the difference in mentality, because Darvel's got a tremendous mentality. That's why they're doing so well in the juniors. That's why they've dispatched like some Joes, who are a good and well-established Scottish League side. So they already had the credentials prepared to play in Aberdeen. And this is just another step too far as people in Scottish football are concerned. And let's just say Scottish football went into pandemonium after this result, which is unsurprising. And Mick Kennedy admitted to 19 missed calls on Tuesday morning when he woke up. So that just tells you everything you need to know. But for Aberdeen, quite simply embarrassing. Are you going to get on to the management situation just now, or are we going to get on to that later on?
I will get on to Aberdeen very shortly, but I just want to touch on something, James. We were talking in the group chat before the game, actually, and we talked about the fact that team talk that Mick Kennedy gave. Now, I'm not a Darvel supporter. I'm a Hearts fan. Everyone knows that. But every word of that Mick Kennedy was talking about was really inspirational. And I said in the group chat that I expected him to shout freedom halfway through that, because it was such an inspirational team talk, and you could tell that every one of those players hung on every word he said. You're on mute, James.
I'm saying absolutely. It was obviously very inspirational, and you could tell that by, just the facial expressions of the Darvel players. And I did actually say at half-time in the group chat that I felt maybe the Darvel manager should have gone into the Aberdeen dressing room at half-time and given them a team talk, and it might have cheered them up a wee bit more.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, I'm going to use a phrase here, Dave, that I've heard before, right? And it's hard work beats ability if ability doesn't work hard. Those Darvel players ran harder, ran faster, worked harder, worked faster than those Aberdeen players. And that is unacceptable. You're on mute, mate.
I'm on mute as well. I'm on mute as well, pardon me. I don't listen to every single Aberdeen podcast, but I've listened to a fair few this week. And they've all mentioned, they've all spoke a good half hour on the game. And Jim Goodwin's not even been mentioned in those half an hour discussions they've had. It's been about body language, character, desire, resilience, talent, what's in the change room, what's out there. And that's where Aberdeen are going. Excuse me, sorry. That's where Aberdeen are going horribly wrong just now. You've got Joe Lewis, experienced custodian, been there and done it. So I don't think you could argue he gets part of the blame, but nowhere near the outfield dynamic of this. As Joe Lewis, his job is to keep the ball in the net and face the game. That's always what he does. Anthony Stewart, you see it yourself in front of the cameras. 2 minutes to go, throw-in takes place. It's not a, hey, who's looking for the ball? It's apologies, by the way, I'm just making hand signal movements if you're listening on the radio, by the way. But he's throwing the ball, and it's not a 40-yard throw in like that. He's basically throwing it to, I don't know who threw it to, but it wasn't exactly inspiring or dynamic, to say the least. So there's that perspective. As I said, Graham, there's been alleged reports of bus stops, which is quite poor, to say the least, when you look at it from a fan or an outside persuasion. But I mean, a good topic was made about Scott Brown on a podcast I listened to, and I never thought about this. Right? But a podcast that I know made a point with Scott Brown and how he was made to leave very easy when Jim Goodwin took the job. And Scott Brown, had he still been at that club, I don't think Aberdeen lose the game with somebody like him, because he's got that leadership. Also, he knows how to not get beat. He's the worst loser. He's a serial winner. And that wouldn't have happened in his book. And for me, there's a lot of things that have went horribly wrong with Goodwin. We'll obviously get on to him later on the show and prepare to have a rant towards him. But take nothing away from Darrell. I do sound like Goodwin when I say that, because that's exactly what Jim Goodwin said in his first part of his press conference after the game. But take nothing away from them. They were absolutely fantastic. But I don't know what you guys think, but I can understand why Mick Kennedy said what he said to Amy Canavan. Because as much as it's a fantastic win and it's something to be savoured, at exactly the same time, they've got a junior league to win. They've got a playoff to win. They wanted to get to the World League. All the way down the line in the long term, they wanted to get the Scottish League. They want to do what Queen's Park are doing, what Cove are doing, what the Kelty Hearts are doing. They want to do what they're doing. And the fact that he said, we're focusing on Arthur Lane Saturday, it's a good management structure. I don't like what Ramiro also said after they beat Dodds, ironically, last week 5-0, of course. So it tells you the differences between both sides. And can I make it clear here that I don't buy this El Sacco thing, right? It is a do or die situation for both. I think El Sacco is getting a bit hyped up now. So I will say it on that front. But, I mean, go back up to Monday. Darvel showed everything about them. They showed all the characters, they showed the power. And it didn't look... I was asked this question, and I've asked the question vice versa to people. Where would Darvel be in the Scottish League right now with the current players to have, the current structure to have, and the current foundations to have, current resources to have? I think they would be League One. I think they'd be battling for... I think they'd be in FC Edinburgh level. I don't know if he's agree, but I think they'd be FC Edinburgh level just now.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely thought that they played some really good football on Monday. You know, they didn't necessarily sit back. They actually caused Aberdeen a lot of problems. And they're passing from the back. You're against the Premier League side, you're a junior side, and you're passing from the back. I thought that was actually very impressive. I don't know what about you, James.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know if they would be at League One based on current, but I've not seen them often enough, and I don't watch a lot of the, in inverted commas, lower league games. But I would reckon that they would probably be maybe definitely somewhere in the Scottish Championship structure, way above junior level. Just based on what I watched on Monday night, they were a very professional outfit in the way that they went about the game. And as Dave said, you know, when you think about the manager's comments, you know, it's obvious he pays a lot of attention to the top managers, you know, because they all do that, don't they? When you say to them and they're like, oh, we're thinking about the next game, you know, regardless of who the next game is, we're thinking about the next game. And that's a good mindset to have. Yes, celebrate that victory, because you never know, you might get put out in the next round. I hope we don't, because I'm going to stick some money on them to beat Falkirk.
Actually, I was going to say that, James, actually. You look at it, they've just knocked out a Premier League side. Falkirk, if I'm a Falkirk fan, if I'm a Falkirk player, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is not going to be an easy game here. We could easily be an end of a beating here.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in before James?
Aye.
Sorry, can I just jump in before James answers that? I think it'll be a different ball game when Darvel play Falkirk. I'm going to be brutally honest with you, and I'll tell you why. See, you guys understand the junior scene. The junior scene is physical, elbows, knees, foot. There's a lot of physical attributes that's attached to junior football. I think Falkirk would be much more adaptable to the way Darvel play and much more adaptable to the way Darvel's game plans would be than Aberdeen would be. The Scottish Premiership is obviously a good standard for obviously like the Celtic Rangers and so forth, and the Hearts as well, because obviously they've done some terrific stuff in the leagues and so forth over the years and over the last few months as well. We had including the Champions League, even though it was a bit disappointing. But irrespective, the Scottish Premiership is a lot more softer. The Scottish Premiership is pass, long ball over the top, maybe a wee toss on the midfield here and there. But if you look at the fact that Aberdeen are very light-hearted in the midfield, obviously Graham Shea didn't play on Monday night, I think Falkirk would have a lot more adaptability. So, as much as I've always been fancied, I think the Falkirk game was slightly different.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with you on that, because, I remember, I'm old enough to remember the big teams, Celtics, the Rangers, the Aberdeens and that, they used to put their young players out to the junior leagues to toughen them up. They had a reserve team, but the young boys, they didn't get much game time. So they stuck them into the juniors, and that turned them into hardened professionals, if you like. So, I think it's a great league. I watched a lot of junior football over the years. I used to go and watch Celtics and juniors, Baylis and juniors. So, I've got a lot of respect for people in those leagues. But I'm just kind of hoping that, Darvel managed to pull it off against Falkirk as well.
Do you know, it's actually very nice to have 4 people on this, because I now don't look like the ugliest person in the show. I'm delighted to say that Michael McEwen has now joined us. Apologies, Michael, but I'm on a roll here. How are you doing, Michael?
Yeah, I'm okay, Graham. I'm okay, and you're doing well on presenting duties, mate. So keep it up, because I don't like the other presenter anyway.
I hope you made your bed there when you get out of it, because Graham was telling us you were still in your bed. So
I wish I was.
It's good to have you on, Michael. We are talking obviously about Aberdeen against Darvel. I mean, I've heard James's thoughts. I've heard Dave's thoughts. I forget your names, just right in front of me. Michael, before we go on Aberdeen, what was your thoughts on Darvel? Because we're all talking about the fact that we thought Darvel were outstanding on Monday. It was a massive victory. And I think Michael McKenna, the manager's stock, has just risen quite a bit now.
Yeah, I think he knows that I'm trying to get him on the show, because he's not responding to my emails. I've been emailing him the last couple of days. Look, it was a brilliant performance by Darvel. Don't take it away from them. It must be big because it makes the BBC News. As well, a small town like Darvel, it puts a spotlight on that town or village or whatever you want to say as well. I know Dave's here, and I don't want to go into Aberdeen too much, but I mean, I think that looking at that game on Monday night, I think that Aberdeen was beaten before they actually came down Ayrshire. That's what it kind of looked like to me. But listen, take nothing away from Darvel. They did well. A good victory, and now favourite to beat Falkirk in the next round.
He definitely heard what I said. He definitely heard what I said, because I said somewhere, Michael, don't you want it?
I never heard you. I was in my bed.
Well,
no, I did say. I did actually say before I came on. I did actually say before I came on that I had a feeling this was end around this line, so it proved to be.
Let's get on to Aberdeen, because obviously Darvel outstanding, but the big story has been Aberdeen, and we have to come to Dave straight away. I mean, it's an embarrassing defeat. Everyone admitted that. There was basically 2 days of radio silence. Nobody was talking. I, like yourself, listened to quite a few Aberdeen podcasts who were furious, and rightly so. And then yesterday they come out with a statement. Dave Comet makes a statement basically saying, you are under pressure, but you're still on the job. Tomorrow's game, as you just said, that there, El Sakiko, is maybe a little bit harsh, but Jim Goodwin now is under huge pressure. Were you, as many Aberdeen fans were, expecting him to have gone after Monday night?
I'll answer this question in two parts. I'll start with Monday. Monday was abhorrent and quite simply unacceptable from an Aberdeen point of view. There's no other way to put it. I mean, the fact that, as we've raised already, the fact that Aberdeen were light-hearted, the fact that Graham Shinnie didn't play due to alleged bust-ups with Jim Goodwin, the fact that obviously there seems to be a division within the changing room. I don't know if that's true, of course, but that seems to be what the rumours are from outside looking in. I'm not a big rumour teller, but that seems to be what's happening, of course. And I mean, take nothing away from Darvel, of course, but Aberdeen should have had enough about them to see themselves over the line. I don't think I've not listened to the press conference from today, but by all accounts, Jim Goodwin was praising the courage of his own committee. Pardon me, only the board of directors. Obviously, what happened in that meeting at Betoton on Wednesday will remain internal. I do have a sneaky what we feel about what happened. They definitely weren't playing musical chairs, I can tell you that for nothing, because if they were playing musical chairs, quite simply, if they were playing musical chairs, we'll find out tomorrow afternoon, won't we? Because if they're playing musical chairs, Jim Goodwin will be safe from his job, and Dave Cormack will do F all about it. So we'll be interested to see in that regard. It'll be quite fascinating, to say the least, but take nothing away from, obviously, Monday. There was enough characters in there, and there was enough body language in there. And the old school days, James, sorry for bringing up your age here, but James is the oldest here. There's obviously 20, 30 years ago, as you've kind of raised with junior football, James, there's been a lot of shot grabbing and half time up against the wall saying, "What are you doing? That's not good enough." There was none of that. There was none of that on the park. Whether that was happening in the changing room after the game is a different story, but there was no attitude, no character. And tomorrow against Hibs is a massive character test for Aberdeen. There's no other way of putting it. But I mean, Jim Goodwin obviously got I don't think he got the team wrong, but I think he got system wrong. He underestimated Darvel a little bit. I think Jim Goodwin used Monday as the analysts will have done the homework on Darvel. Absolutely, they would have, right? But on the other hand, I think they'd have looked at Darvel with they're brave in the ball when they play junior teams, they're on the front foot when they play junior teams, but they'll get scared off when they play somebody full-time or somebody full-time. The stature and the talent that Aberdeen should have and the quality Aberdeen should have. Ultimately, that wasn't the case. Now, if you reverberate to 9 days beforehand, Aberdeen were absolutely stellar against Rangers, and it had not been for Anthony Stewart's calamity, and I think that's the correct word to use, calamity, because quite simply, he got sent off, and it ruined the complexion and ruined the dimension of the game for Aberdeen. 9 days later, we're speaking about a Scottish Cup shot because Cromwell is the system. Quite simply didn't work, and there was a lot of players that were just underwhelming on the evening as a whole. 2 days later, that's for Jim Goodwin, and I'll try and keep this short and sweet because I know how Michael loves me not having long answers, but unfortunately, I've got to get my ranking here. The Football Monitoring Board. Now, I've made the point to people in the last few weeks. This is not because of the deteriorating form of Aberdeen, but I've made the point to people. There's not a lot of football-minded people on the board. Football-minded people in terms of they've played the game, managed the game, so forth. Roy Garner and Craig Brown springs to mind, but that's really it. Aberdeen need more, like a Leanne Dempster, if I'm going to be looking at similarities here. There's Dave Cormack, there's Robert Wicks. Neither of those guys, pardon me, have played the game. Neither of those guys have been within changing rooms. Molly Garner and Craig Brown have managed. Craig Brown's the last Scotland manager to guide us to Euro 98 for Scotland. So that just tells you everything you need to know about respecting them within the game and how Aberdeen see a lot of trust in them and all that kind of stuff. Now, there was a frank discussion with Jim Goodwin. There's no other way I put it. But at exactly the same time, Barry Robson, who works at the club and runs the under-18s team, would have been a safe pair of hands, I think, for Aberdeen. And this immediate response, nobody knows what that is. There's not a defined time limit. There's not a defined time scale regarding what's happening. Is it 1 game? Is it 3 games? My prediction, but a lot of people disagree with this, my prediction is 3 games. Tomorrow, Wednesday against Sunderland, and next Saturday against Liverpool. I think it'll be a 3-game window, and I think he's got to pick up minimum 6 points, or else he's gone. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But tomorrow answers a lot of questions for me. character, a good one. Do I think he should have been getting his shot on Wednesday? 100%. You do not survive a defeat on that. Now, if we look at Graham's side of things here, obviously Hearts got beat by Brona a couple of years ago. But Robbie Nielsen came out fighting after the game. He's speaking to Brian McLaughlin at the BBC and came all out fighting afterwards. Jim Goodwin's body language to the written press and Chris Harvey at STV and the guy Gabriel and Tony Hazzy at Clyde FM was bewildering to say the least. It was very, very poor. There was no more than a 3-second look at journalists, and the body language is completely different between Robbie and Jim. So I think Jim has a lot of answers to answer. He's got a lot proving to prove to people. I just got to obviously kiss and apologise to Dave, Robert, and the rest of the board, because quite simply it just wasn't good enough. So Jim in charge for tomorrow. But I think if Hibs score first, it could get intense and it could get hostile.
I do love Gordon Hunter's comment here. As a Kelly fan, can we swap managers with Darvel? There's a few people who will be saying the same thing. I'll just read out some of Jim Goodwin's comments from today. He's vowed to repay the faith of Aberdeen's board and says it would have been very easy for them to sack me on the spot. He said they took time to consider the decision. They've shown great faith in me. They've shown me that they still believe I am the man to take this club forward. But I have got to go out and prove that now, and I have got to prove that to the supporters. I will not be walking away from anything. It would be easier for me to do that. I'm up for the challenge. I am as determined as ever to make a success. Now, we did say there is no time frame on it. I'm taking it game by game right now. I'm just trying to think of what else he said here. He also said, and he's adamant, now, James, it's very easy to say this in the light of day, but he is adamant that he has the full support of his players. I don't think a lot of Aberdeen fans will be thinking the same thing after Monday night.
Well, do you know what? I'll be perfectly honest with you. After the 5-0 drubbing from Hearts, I thought he was out. The fact that he survived to take it to the Scottish Cup game, I thought, yeah, he'll probably get a good win against Darvel, and that'll solidify his position a little bit. That didn't happen, and I honestly thought he's got to go now, you know. When it was announced that he was still going to be in charge for the game against Hibs this weekend, and obviously they've got their own troubles to seek, it does make for a very interesting game. And I kind of agree with Dave a little bit. I think if Hibs get their noses in front from an Aberdeen's perspective, I think it's going to be, as Sir Alex Ferguson was quoted, squeaky bum time.
Michael, since the World Cup break, or since they came back from the World Cup, Aberdeen have won 1 in 9 games. For any club, that's unacceptable. But for Aberdeen, a team that Michael Beale had said is the third best team of Scotland, that is a shocking record.
Yeah, no. Can I go back to something that Dave said about 5 minutes ago about the semi-final? But also, I put on a message on the group chat the other night was saying about we were talking about the game on Monday, and I said to everybody on the group chat, this goes back to the Celtic game for me, because I've never saw Aberdeen playing like that. In fact, Aberdeen was that far back. I thought they were at the beach playing football, you know, but for the whole game, they never came out. In terms of like the game up at Piccoglie when they were beating Rangers 2-0, that was Jim Goodwin's fault. You know, he took off Duke and they took off another player. I can't remember his name, Dave. And then when you go to Hampden, they were maybe 15 minutes away from, you know, getting into the final. So if you look at it this way, like Aberdeen had 2 decent, brilliant chances to beat Rangers, and they shot themselves in the foot twice. So they've got nothing. They've got nobody to blame apart from themselves, and they could game that. I don't know if Dave would kind of like agree with me there, but like as they win tomorrow, okay, but they need to put in a decent performance, especially going away to East Road as well. A point's no good, you know, and I think as well that I made the point on Monday night as well, and it might be too harsh of me to say this, Dave, that that Dave Cormack needs to have a good look at himself there as well, because as Dave was looking through a minute ago, he brought on two kind of Stephen Glass and Scott Brown. That was that never worked out. Jim Goodwin's not working out whatsoever, so he needs to have a good look at himself there as well. But in saying that, Jim Goodwin should look at himself and say, well, why are they keeping me in a job here? Because I've not been performing to the best of my ability as well. So everybody's got to have a good look at themselves at Aberdeen at the moment and sort themselves out. And I know, like Dave was saying about Shinnie not playing the other night for Aberdeen. But to be honest, Aberdeen's got a brilliant squad, a good squad. They should get Nick Shinnie to come on and score one and go and all that. Maybe I'm being a bit disrespectful to Davil there, I don't know. But I mean, you know what I mean? They've got a good squad.
What I mean by Graham Shinnie is we missed that robustness in the middle of the park. We missed that stability. And it isn't like Graham Shinnie was going to go and make left dart and runs into the box and all that kind of stuff. It's because Graham Shinnie was a bit more too light-hearted. And the reason why I defend Shinnie playing on Monday was because Darrell they're not a hard-hitting physical genius side. No, but they are a side that will bully you if you allow them to. And that's exactly where Aberdeen went wrong on Monday. As for, obviously, Rangers comments, obviously, that 3-2 defeat to Rangers at Pittodrie, I was there. And Robbie Hanratty, one of our pundits, he kind of raised the point that we could easily, Jim Goodwin's had 5 sackable offences, which I can see where he's trying to reference it to. 2 of those will be the Rangers, because, I'd say one of those is the Rangers, pardon me, because obviously that Pittodrie debacle, where obviously took off Duke, and I think it was Matty Kennedy. I was trying to remember who he took off. I think it was Matty Kennedy. I'm not 100% sure, but he said that. There was obviously St Mirren, where it was another objective performance. Wednesday, I felt he was going to survive till Monday. And then Monday was untenable for me with regards to Goodwin. I think he made some good points about Aberdeen, Michael. It's just the lack of a good blend, massively, and things need to improve fast.
Before we move on, I'm just going to quickly mention Aberdeen again. Dave, I know it's difficult to take positive from Monday night, but the one thing that I would say about Aberdeen on Monday, I thought Ryan Duncan on the right-hand side actually looked Aberdeen's best threat. Now, he was only 19, but I thought he looked very lively.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was very impressed with Ryan. I don't think he gets enough opportunities for me. I think Ryan Duncan's got the potential to break into the Aberdeen team. The reason why he probably doesn't get enough games is probably because of how good Duke's been doing, and he's not really played recently, but Vicente Bajur, they've obviously been doing really well for Jim Goodwin of late. So that's probably the reasons why he hasn't been playing as much. But he's obviously been within the periphery. The good one spell Peterhead last year, and he's been playing in a couple of the reserve games. Aberdeen don't have a reserve team this year, but they've been playing a few reserve games against high league sides in the cups and so forth. So he's been playing a couple of those. So he's been impressed with every single one. I think he scored against Bucky recently as well. So that's been very, very good from his perspective. And another player that doesn't get another player that featured on Monday, but it doesn't get enough credit for me, is Connor Barron. A lot of Aberdeen fans forget that he suffered. I forgot what the injury was, but he got injured up at Bucky in a pre-season friendly, and that was him out for 8 weeks. Right, when you get injured in June in pre-season, it's obviously hard for you to try and get fitness, because all your fitness work is done June, July, because obviously you're building up to the start of the season. You're coming back September. Players are doing a lot more ball work, which means football fitness-wise, he's not doing as much. So it was understandable it's going to take a while for him to come back, but the Aberdeen Youth Academy gets a bit of a kicking sometimes when things don't go well for the first team. But they've had Calvin Ramsey, Barron and Ryan Duncan over the last 2 years. And we all still are very critical of it, and I don't know why.
Let's now link Aberdeen with the game tomorrow against Hibernian Easter Road. Hibs on the back of a very unfortunate 3-0 Cup defeat to Hearts, what a shame, last week. And on the back of that, today they have sold Ryan Porteous for £450,000 to Watford. We did obviously think that Kevin Nisbet was going to go to Millwall, but Kevin Nisbet has turned that down. I have no idea why. So that's a big, big bonus for Hibs. In terms of tomorrow, James, I mean, this is a game that could be a 0-0 draw. It could be a horrible game. I mean, two teams that are massively off form and need to win. What are you thinking for this game tomorrow?
I think the fact that Nisbet has decided he's going to stay for the moment with Hibs will be a great boost for the Hibs team. I don't know if it would be a bit of a downer for the Aberdeen players. I shouldn't think so. But for the support, I think it will G the support up as well. So it might kind of add a wee bit extra pressure from the stands during the game in that respect on Aberdeen. But I can only assume that from a personal point, the offer for Kevin Nisbet wasn't what he wanted. It was probably going to be more than what Hibs are giving him, I have to say. The cynic in me would say that maybe he's holding out for a move to Celtic.
Funny, that's been mentioned on Twitter as well. A few folk have mentioned that.
But in saying that, if he did sign for Celtic at this moment in time, I think he's just a squad player. Whereas at the moment for Hibs, he's like, first team pick all the time.
James, I don't. You're dead right there, because like we were talking about Porteous a few weeks ago as well, and he's a squad player, but he would never get in that team.
Well, do you know what? I never gave any credence to the talk about Porteous going to Celtic, because he's a decent player, but he's not to the standard. And I don't even think he's to the standard for Rangers, if I'm being absolutely honest. He's probably better going down south, and maybe that'll turn him into a bit of a better player. I don't know. Kevin Nisbet's a slightly different prospect, because as a goal scorer, in theory, if he gets the service, he's going to score goals wherever he goes. And the fact that he's scored, I think it's 7 since he's come back from injury with Hibs, just shows you how good he is as a goal scorer.
Michael, I'll just touch on the fact that it's a boost for Hibs that they're obviously keeping Kevin Nisbet, but they have lost Ryan Porteous. How big a blow is that going to be for Hibs?
I think what my answer will be, Graham, and it really goes back to what James's point was a minute ago. We were talking about him on the show weeks ago as well, and if I was a Hibs fan watching Hibs every week or on the telly, you wouldn't say, wow, Porteous was a man of a match. He was all over that other team, because personally speaking, and I've got some mates, I have got a mate, by the way, that he think he would be good for Celtic and all the rest of it. And I said no, because this is my personal opinion on him. I think he's very overrated. I mean, what gives he? I might be a bit critical of the guy here, but what does he offer the Hibs team apart from a bit of fight in the middle of the park and a odd kind of yellow card now and again? But really, what does he offer to the team? But I'm not sure if it would be if Hibs would miss him. Maybe at the moment, a bit of a fight in the middle of the park, but he doesn't dominate games in a way. So I'm not. I would say they wouldn't miss him in a kind of way, and that's no disrespect to the guy. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. But I don't think it would be a big loss to the team, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, I think Porteous is overrated. I think he's very rash at times, but I think if you look at Kevin Nisbet, James, and you mentioned this in the chat as well, quite rightly so, in the build-up to today, you said that if Nisbet goes, who's going to score the goals for Hibs? Because, again, you rightly said, if he doesn't score, nobody else is. But now he's staying. We don't know how long for. Still a few days out the window. If Kevin Nisbet gets injured, or if Kevin Nisbet does eventually go in this window, there's nobody who'll step up in the Hibs team and score goals for them.
Yeah, I mean, I know in the chat Dave did say, the boy McCurdy, and I replied to him and saying, I've only seen this lad a couple of times, and when I have seen him, he's come on as a sub, and I honestly don't think I've ever seen him score a goal. Now, he might be a very good goal scorer, but I've just not seen him doing it. So I don't think your other fellow, what's his name, the boy who's injured just now, got injured before the World Cup.
Martin Boyle. He's probably the only other person that you could kind of say would be a regular goal scorer for Hibs, along with Kevin Nisbet. So if he was fit and Nisbet went, I wouldn't have been so bothered. But the fact that he's still out injured, if Nisbet had gone, in my opinion, I thought they were going to be losing a huge chance for scoring goals. Yeah, I mean, Michael, we've only got about 4 days left till the transfer window shuts. And by the way, for anyone that's watching, what a shameless plug again. We are actually back on Tuesday night. We are doing a special live transfer deadline day from 10 till 12 on Tuesday night. We'll have a few special guests on that on as well. There's not a lot of shows that do like a live transfer show. And I thought, do you know what? Let's do it here. So we'll be on from 10 till 12 on Tuesday night talking about the transfer deadline day. Now, Michael, I would imagine that Rocky Bashiri is now out for 3 months for Hibs. They've just lost Ryan Porteous. Hibs are not on a particularly great run. They're out the cup. I would imagine that Lee Johnson, after tomorrow, is going to be a very busy man in this next few days.
He might be busy if he wins. But if he doesn't win, he might be busy looking for a new job or a new jacket. But yeah, I mean, but I'm not entirely sure. See, January is a funny window, right? Because you don't get a lot of big signings or big names coming into teams. But I'm not entirely sure who Hibs would be after. That's a kind of difficult one. I think it's because I'm not in Edinburgh. I don't skate in Edinburgh. I'm not a Hibs fan or whatever. I wouldn't know the comings and goes on at Easter Road, but they need to do something. But I'll tell you what they need to do. They need to start winning, and that begins tomorrow against Aberdeen. And saying that, they were actually even though Hearts beat them the other week in the cup game, or last weekend it was actually, Hibs were the better team, but they still get beat. And it's all saying in football, you can have many shots at goal at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it's a scoreline. It's the biggest at the end of the day. But I'm not entirely sure who Hibs would go after in the window, and they've not got a lot of time left, as you were saying, Graham. So I'm not sure. They might actually come in for you if you want to go on a Bosman, but I'm not entirely.
I mean, James, in terms of tomorrow's game, Aberdeen have not won away from home since the 22nd of October. They're going to Easter Road, who, Hibs are not in a great run just now. I mean, I honestly don't know what way this game is going to go. I think right now, if you ask both managers if they take a 0-0 draw, I think they probably snap their hand off for it.
Yeah, my apologies for my poor etiquette there. I was actually responding to a message from someone. Shameless plug number 2 on the show.
It wasn't Jim Goodwin, was it?
No, it wasn't Jim Goodwin. We had been, from an ND Live Radio perspective, we had a tweet out earlier saying if anybody was interested in joining us, how to get in touch with us. And I was just replying to somebody who's responded to that, saying that they were interested. So there might be some new blood. We never know. But yeah, back to the show and back to the old footy. Yeah, it's a week ago, in all honesty, I would have said that a draw would have been a great result for both of those managers, just based on, the last couple of games prior to that. Obviously, we didn't know what was going to happen. last Monday night, that's definitely put Jim Goodwin's coat on an even sugarier peg, I would think, than Lee Johnson. And let's be honest, his coat is on the sugariest of pegs. So I think a draw will probably give both managers a little bit of breathing space. If either of them manage to get 3 points, it will solidify their position. And as Dave was saying earlier, from Jim Goodwin's point of view, yeah, he probably does have 2 or 3 games in which to get at least 6 points out of. And, that'll maybe see him through to the end of the season sort of idea. Whereas from a Lee Johnson point of view, I think if he loses the game tomorrow, I think Michael could be right. He might be looking for a new job as opposed to new players.
You can be presenting in the live radio. There you go. There's a shameless plug again. Michael, what you said a minute ago, you were right. I mean, Hibs, and I said this at the time, Hibs were the better team last week, but they're the kind of games that I like. We get outplayed and still win. Love the Derby games. But in terms of tomorrow, I mean, for Aberdeen, I know that Dave says that they maybe got a 3-game window. If you put yourself in Aberdeen fans' shoes, if you lose tomorrow, I mean, obviously you want to win the game, but what would be acceptable from an Aberdeen point of view? Is it performance? Would that be acceptable if you get beat but you play well?
I think, if you ask me that question, I think, a couple of weeks ago, I would have said to you, the win over the performance, but in this occasion I would say a win and a decent, not a decent performance, but a brilliant performance. I was going to say for 90 minutes, but because we've got VR, it might be 89 minutes now in the game as well. But what James was saying about the draw, if you're pushing me on that one, I would say Lee Johnson more than Jim Goodwin would be happy with the draw tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, James is right. Overall, they wouldn't be happy either manager. But I think a draw would suit Lee Johnson. But yeah, I mean, I know Dave is saying that he's got a 3-game window. Well, no, because the 3-game window should have finished about 2 weeks ago. You just can't go on and saying, oh, he's got 3 games, he's got 2 games, he's got 5 games. Am I right in saying that Aberdeen finished in the bottom 6 last season as well?
I can't remember where they finished last season.
I'm sure it was 9th or something. So that's two seasons in a row that Aberdeen's season is finished in, it's February. It's finished out of, they're never going to win the league. They're out of the League Cup and they're out of the Scottish Cup now. So what have they got to play for now? I think they've got to put in play as a kind of unit, I think, from now until the end of the season, and get things sorted out at the end of the season. Albeit it's still a long way to go until the end of the season. But what have they got to play for? Because the season's over.
I'm going to push you for predictions. James, Hibs against Aberdeen. What's your prediction?
I'm going to stick my neck out here and say I think Hibs will win it. And I think they'll probably win it 2 or 3-0.
Michael?
Yeah, 2-0 Hibs.
I'm going 0-0 because Hibs can't score and Aberdeen can't win every home. I'm going 0-0. A horrible, horrible game. 0-0 draw all over it. It'll probably finish about 5-5 now. But so let's move on to the game tomorrow at Ibrox, where Rangers play St Johnstone. Michael, you've said a few times in the show before, and I do kind of agree with you as well. Although Rangers have been winning,
That's the first. Yeah.
Although Rangers have been winning, they've not been particularly impressive. But at home tomorrow, you would imagine they'll be too strong for St Johnstone.
Yeah, I basically called Rangers, my nickname for them is the 45-minute team. I don't think I've seen them actually playing well for 90 minutes for a few a few weeks, and maybe that goes back to when Gio was in as well. But look, I saw them playing against St Johnstone last week as well, and they did well, even though it was it felt like a home game for Rangers instead of an away game. They got the job done, but they're not really convincing. They're not really convincing at the moment, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when you play for Rangers or Celtic, you have to win. And to be fair, James, they are winning. It's maybe not great. I mean, last week they played St Johnstone in the Cup. They managed to win the game 1-0 through Borna Barisic. But again, they really had to work for that victory.
Yeah, I mean, often you hear people saying in football, that it's the result rather than the performance that matters. And that is very often true. However, when you're at a club like Celtic or Rangers, their fans demand the performance and the result. And while they'll celebrate a victory, however narrow, if the team doesn't play well, at the back of their minds and between themselves when they're chatting about it, they'll be calling the team everything under the sun for not giving, 110%, as it should be, because let's be honest, these guys get paid a heck of a lot of money. And, the punters that are going to see them make huge sacrifices to go there and watch them, especially when it's an away game. So they deserve for the team to do better. But Rangers, they're a good team. They're just probably still a little bit of a hangover from, the issues earlier on in the season when Gio was in charge at the club. And Michael Beale needs time to kind of turn it around, get them playing the way he wants. Sometimes I've watched them since Michael Beale came in and they've looked good. Like when they played Celtic a couple of weeks back there, they looked a really good team, Rangers. But then the next game, they were sort of back, a kind of backward step, as it were. The second half against Aberdeen, when they went on to ultimately win the game, they kind of piled their socks up and they looked really good. But then the game afterwards, they kind of slipped backwards again. So it's consistency that they need to get. And I suppose really the only team that's consistent at the moment in the SPL is Celtic and Hearts.
Wait till next season when Hearts add to their squad and challenge for the title. US Open. Michael, Rangers have added to their squad. They signed Norwich midfielder Todd Cantwell, 24-year-old. I've seen this guy play. He's a very good player. 120 games for Norwich and he scored 13 goals. He will add a lot more firepower to the Rangers team because he does score goals from midfield. And for a long time, he was probably one of Norwich's best players.
Yeah, him and a wee guy called Pookie. I don't know if James remembers Pookie. But yeah, I was quite surprised. Maybe that's a bit harsh for me saying that. But yeah, that is a good signing for Rangers. And Rangers needs a goal scorer as well. He's a good player. He signed for a few years. How many years has he signed for again?
I can tell you maybe if I can find it.
I can't remember. But yeah, that's a good deal. But a couple of weeks ago, I was watching Michael Beale's presser, and he was saying that the 2 or 3, so they better hurry up and get another 2 into. Because I don't think the Rangers fans would just buy one signing for the whole month. Maybe I'm being a bit hard again there, but I'm just kind of like, because you're thinking Rangers is a big team, and if Michael Beale is coming out to make a statement like that, we'll back it up with a few more kind of signings. But yeah, a decent signing.
Yeah, I mean, James, if we look at St Johnstone, they've had a very up and down season. A lot of teams are very inconsistent. St Johnstone, I think they did play well against Rangers last week, but couldn't score. Ibrox is a different case. Rangers obviously did lose to St Johnstone at McDermott Park a few weeks ago. But Callum Davidson is one of these guys that he does a very good job with very limited funds. And I think me and Dave touched on this last week on the show. I found it very disappointing, and I obviously weren't on the show last week, but I found it very disappointing that St Johnstone gave 3 stands to Rangers last week. There was only 400 St Johnstone fans there. I thought that was a spectacular own goal from St Johnstone.
It certainly was. And ironically enough, similar thing happens when Celtic go up there to Perth to play. And it happens at a lot of grounds, let's be honest. When Celtic and Rangers go to play at a lot of grounds, they do vastly outnumber the home support. And I can kind of understand from a financial point that the club knows that they're going to get more money from the away fans than they are from a relatively small number of home fans. But at the same time, if I was a St Johnstone supporter, and I understand that some of them were season ticket holders who had lost their seats to accommodate the Rangers supporters, I would be well and truly annoyed about that. In fact, I might even be inclined to rip up my season ticket.
Michael, you spoke about this before, and I have as well. But that was basically a home game for Rangers this week. And for me, when you play at home, you should not be outnumbered by the away fans. I thought that was, Dave said it last week as well. That was a very poor decision from Jeff Brown. And listen, he's going to be leaving St Johnstone. He's done a great job. But for me, that was a very poor decision.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Graham, it was a bit embarrassing because that game was on TV, and if anybody tuned into that, they must have thought, "Oh, Rangers has got a new stadium." But I remember because a few seasons ago they'd done it to Celtic as well, and they gave Celtic the free scans and they filled it out. So good Rangers last week as well. But yeah, I'm going to agree with the number one presenter, apart from me and you, Graham, Mr. Elliott, that if I was a St Mirren fan, I would rip my season ticket up because
it's not St Mirren's fault. Don't blame them.
I know it was St Johnstone.
Oh, yes, St Johnstone. Yeah, I got my Saints mixed up, or Saints on the Sunday. No, by all means, St Johnstone won. They go to sell that out. Let's face it, because how many games have you saw Graham on the telly when Hearts got up there? They never sell out. They never sell out against Ross County as well. Yeah, I was just saying about this, the St Johnstone fans, they might be a bit embarrassed because don't forget, a few years ago they won the double. And St Johnstone went tie blocks during lockdown, I think it was, and your goalkeeper Zangar Clark scored the winning goal. So, but that tells me as though St Johnstone fans were saying, "Well, we're beat anyway, may as well give them everything." Yeah, and that's what it was looking like. But no, again, it was such a kind of own goal for Scottish football again, as well, and it didn't look too good for Scottish football in a big cup game. So it was a one-off game, and a couple of weeks previous to that. That was Gio's, second last game before he got the sack, and St Johnstone beat them 2-1. So, St Johnstone fans must not have any faith in their team. But yeah, it was quite embarrassing.
I think though, St Johnstone, like many clubs in Scotland, suffer from Celtic and Rangers because there are too many people who would rather go to Glasgow to watch Celtic or Rangers play than go to, say, McDermott Park and watch St Johnstone, and it's the same's true all over Scotland. And it's not up to me to say to people, you shouldn't support Celtic or you shouldn't support Rangers. But I do believe that if you've got a local football club, you should give them as much support as you possibly can. When I lived down south, in various different places, I would go and watch whoever the local team nearest to me was, When I lived in London, I used to go and watch Fulham play. So, in actual fact, Chelsea was a bit closer to me than Fulham, but I've never liked Chelsea, so I was never going to go there.
But you're saying that, James, and I get what you're saying, but if you go back to talking about Aberdeen, they had a brilliant support. They had 17,000 at the home games up until it's Kaki going downhill. And Celtic and Rangers fans come from Aberdeen as well. I mean, Hearts, they come from Edinburgh, but the Tynecastle still get, 15,000, between 15 and 17,000 gives the week for home games. And also they have a decent away support as well. But I know what you mean, James, but I'm, just giving you comparisons between other teams as well.
Yeah, but also I think, success breeds support,
Yeah.
And obviously Hearts are benefiting with increased numbers because the team are doing so well. And that's how it should be. But when St Johnstone done the Cup double, it didn't improve their fan base. It did when they went to Cup finals, but it didn't improve afterwards. And the point is, if you're going to go and watch a team like St Johnstone because they make it to a Cup final or a couple of Cup finals, why can you not go, not saying go every single week when they're playing? Because obviously in the current economic climate, it's not particularly easy for people to do that. But at least go, 2 or 3 times a season, especially when they're going to come up against the likes of Celtic or Rangers or teams that are perceived to be bigger than them.
I think that's what me and Glenn were saying the other week about the last time we saw McDermott Park was when St Johnstone was in Europe, and then just suddenly St Johnstone get put out and they were back to one man and a Sturg as well. But I wanted to kind of touch upon, James, what you were saying about the fan base as well. I mean, you just have to look at Kilmarnock against Celtic the other week in the Cup. Kilmarnock handed half of their tickets back. And, that was the first time Kilmarnock's been in a semi-final for 10 years. And you're thinking, okay, deep down, you be thinking, well, Celtic, Celtic will win here. But you never know in a kind of one-off game. And that was Kilmarnock only had 1B section and Celtic had the rest of the Skigum, so,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do agree with you on that. And, with a cup game, anything can happen because it is, literally it is that one game. I don't know nowadays if replays are so common. When I was a lad, if you played a cup game and it was a draw after 90 minutes, it often meant, there was a replay.
They don't have replays now, James.
Yeah. Likewise, when you got to the actual finals, if the final was a draw, it was a replay, but no, they don't. They play that extra time and, then they go to the penalties and all that, which is fair enough because they want to get it done and dusted on the night. I completely understand that. But yeah, as a supporter, you've got to believe in your team, I mean, I have never, ever thought that my team would lose the game. In my head, I've known that they're up against superior opposition and their chances are severely limited. But in my heart, I've always thought they're going to win, and I think, a proper football fan is going to be like that. A bit like Graham, Up until recently...
That's not me.
Up until recently, his team been getting gubbed right, left and centre,
Only by Celtic and Rangers. We beat everyone else. But, I mean, Michael, in terms of on the park, St Johnstone haven't won a league. St Johnstone haven't won since the 17th of December. Will that be a slight concern for Callum Davidson going to Ibrox?
No, not at all, Graham. I think they'll be up against it because, again, there'll be 50,000 fans there tomorrow. We know what will happen. They'll park the bus and they'll try and hit Rangers on the counter-attack. On the counter-attack as well. But no, I mean, I would be very surprised if St Johnstone gets a point out that game tomorrow. So, yeah, I would say Rangers would have to work for their victory, but I think they'll win the game tomorrow.
Yeah, predictions for tomorrow, James?
I can't see anything other than a Rangers victory. But I don't see it being a big victory because I think St Johnstone are capable of, limiting them, but not capable of winning.
Michael, would you agree with that?
Yeah. And if you're pushing me, Graham, because I can see the eyes now, 3-0 Rangers, and they weren't all penalties. Wow.
I was going to say.
Ooh.
To be fair, that's Hearts that get penalties these days, so you got to get in the box for that. So, although I love Shanklin's goal last week for the penalty spot, great penalty. Yeah, I'm gonna go 4-0 Rangers because you stole my 3-0 one. Let's go to a team that can't score goals, and that's Ross County against Kilmarnock. I mean, James, again, Ross County have been on a terrible run. I've just said they can't score goals. They're the lowest scorers in the league. If anybody we're talking about Jim Goodwin needs results. If anyone needs results, it's Malky Mackay.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, they shot themselves in the foot at the end of last season, Ross County, because they sold the two guys that were scoring for fun, if you like, for them, and they never replaced them. Now, I don't know if that's because they couldn't find anybody that they felt was as good as or better than, or if it was the club didn't want to pay whatever it was going to take to get somebody to do that. But they've obviously suffered this season as a result of it. So it's one of those games that could easily be a draw, that game. But I think Kilmarnock are on a bit of a roll at the moment, and I can see them winning that game. I'll go for a 2-0.
Michael, I think it was probably no surprise that Ross County got knocked out of the cup last week by Hamilton. Hamilton, a championship side, bottom of the league. But the way that Ross County are going, I don't think anyone looked at that score and thought, that's a shock.
Hamilton's always a decent team, Graham, no matter what division they come into. I mean, I remember a few years ago that they went to Circuit Park and beat Circuit 1-0, and nobody was expecting that. So they are a decent team. I mean, I was just laughing there, Graham, when we were talking about Hibs and Aberdeen. It's the... What did you say? The sacking derby or something? Or the
El Sacchio.
Yeah, El Sacchio. Yeah. Well, this could be El Sacchio as well between Ross County and Kilmarnock. But Ross County's at home, so you can't write Ross County off. Well, away as well, but especially at home because of that wee tight park that they've got up there as well. So, I mean, I will go for 1-0 win for Ross County as well. But I just want to ask James and yourself that I know we were talking on the show weeks ago about they gave Derek McInnes a 4-year deal. I think Kilmarnock was a bit quick to offer him that kind of deal. I don't know if you would agree with me there.
No, I would disagree with you, Michael, because I actually think Derek McInnes is a better manager than what Kelly should have. And the job he did when he was at Aberdeen, admittedly, they never really won trophies, but they were always there or thereabouts. That's why people referred to him as the third team in Scotland, because he was getting them up there. And I'm not saying that because he's left, that's what's caused the slide for Aberdeen, but he had to move on. And I must admit, when he took the Kelly job, I kind of thought he was taking it on the bounce because he was expecting to go to Ibrox again because he was getting mentioned as the next Rangers manager, and that didn't happen. But I think he's done a super job at Kilmarnock. He's brought in not necessarily world-class players, but he's brought in footballers who are good journeyman footballers. And there are times when I watch Kilmarnock, I get very annoyed at them because they seem to be a team that's just there to kick everything, and not necessarily anything that's spherical. But there are other times when you watch Kilmarnock and they do play some nice football.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, I think for me, they beat Dumbarton last week in the Cup at home, but they only won 1-0. I don't think I've said this before, I don't think Kilmarnock are a particularly great side to watch. They can be effective in what they do. And Gordon Hunter mentioned earlier on that he wanted the Derby manager to get their job instead of Derek McInnes. So that just shows you what Gordon Hunter thinks of them. But I think they're a stuffy side, but I don't think they play that well. And tomorrow, I was actually just looking just now, Ross County's last victory was the 8th of November at Easter Road. Ironically, it's the only time they've only scored twice in a game. That's the last time they did it. you can see what the problems are with Ross County. I think this game tomorrow is a huge, huge game for Malky Mackay. And I think as well, I just said it earlier on, we've got about 4 days to the transfer window shuts. I think Ross County and Kilmarnock are going to have to strengthen big time in the window. But my worry would be, and no disrespect to these teams, where are they going to sign quality from?
I think for me, it's not so much about getting sort of permanent players in at this point in time. They want to survive in the league, right? So it's about getting good quality loan players in, you know. And if they need players who are going to put the ball in the back of the net, then they need to find players that they can bring in on loan. And then maybe, you know, come the end of the season, if they've managed to keep up, look at, you know, maybe even offering these guys, you know, a permanent contract there if they're not maybe playing that well or that regularly for their parent clubs. But it's whether or not the player wants to go there. See, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. If a player doesn't want to go somewhere, there's nothing the football club can do about it. And I think that's kind of shown up there with the Kevin Nisbet situation. You know, Hibs accepted over £2 million from Millwall, but Kevin Nisbet has knocked Millwall back, you know, and he doesn't have to go. He's got a contract for, I think it's 18 months still to run on his contract with Hibs. So, you know, he could sort of sit there. You know, it's a bit like Giacomakis at Celtic.
Was that not the same as Bobo Powell as well, James, a few years ago? Yeah.
The thing is that when a player has got a reasonable amount of time on his contract, he doesn't have to go somewhere. If he's not happy with what somebody's offering him, it doesn't matter how much money the club's willing to accept for him, he can then sit there. That's why I have always thought that it's better to have a player moved on than have him sitting there being a bit of a disruptive force.
You wouldn't want to disrupt Bobo Baldi. That guy was huge. I wouldn't mess with him. He was mental. But in terms
Bobo's going to get you.
I was going to say that. But in terms of tomorrow, Michael, I mean, you look at the league table. Ross County are bottom on 17 points. Kilmarnock are second bottom on 20 points. This is a huge, huge game. If Kilmarnock can get 3 points out of this, they put a bit of distance between themselves and Ross County. And I've already said before, I think it will be those two that are going to be bottom and second bottom of the division.
Yeah, I think what we say in the second half of the season is, even though it's the business end of the season, but this is a kind of 6 point game. It's not a 3 point game, it's a 6 point game. But yeah, I mean, I've been actually quite disappointed in Kilmarnock, James, because when they come up, because I mean, I was that used to watching them before they went down, and I saw them a few times in the championship, and they're a decent team. But it's funny how you kind of like forget about the levels as well. And your point earlier on, James, about Ross County, because is it Charles Cook? Was it Ross County? He was actually scoring goals for fun last season, and they're missing him this season. And they've not got a kind of out and out goal scorer. But Ross County kind of, and I've said this a few times on the show already. Ross County and Livingston and Hamilton all reminds me of the same, because they're not a good football team, but they work a hell of a lot, and like, you've got to work for the victory. So Kilmarnock needs to be careful to go up to sunny Dingwall tomorrow and beat them. But I think Ross County might edge that one.
So let's get predictions for tomorrow. Ross County, Kilmarnock. James, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go 2-0 for Kelly.
Michael?
1-0 County.
I'm going to go 0-0. Let's move on. St Mirren against Motherwell tomorrow. St Mirren sitting in 7th, Motherwell sitting in 9th. Again, Michael, I think St Mirren have had a decent season so far. Robinson's done a good job. They are very strong at home. Motherwell have been, again, very up and down. A lot of Motherwell fans are still not overly convinced with Stevie Hamill, and that big question about the fact that they rely on Kevin Van Veen. Although they did beat Arbroath last week, which is a difficult place to go. Tomorrow is a difficult game to call, I would say.
Am I being a bit disrespectful, guys, when I'm saying that out with Celtic and Rangers and Hearts, St Mirren's been the surprise package this season? they've been quite an enjoyable football team to watch as well. They've got some players all over the park that can score goals as well. Skipping Robertson, when they went in at first, I was a wee bit iffy about him, but he's actually turned it round now. I think because he brought half of the Motherwell team to St Mirren, I think, bring your mates to your new job and all that. But they're a good football team. They know each other's job in the park. Opposite way from Motherwell, it's kind of that the wheels just came off the apple cart here. I was actually just thinking about this the other week. It's actually quite been a weird season because when you think of, I always think of Motherwell and St Johnstone and all that being like a top 6 team, but when you think about it, they're actually at the bottom 6, if you know what I mean, if that kind of makes sense as well. So yeah. Yeah, I harp on about this every week on the show, Glenn. But I mean, I think if the skill held on to Tony Watt, I think they might be in a better position than they are at the moment. I might be wrong in saying that. Kevin Van Veen, I mean, he does get into good he gets into good chances on the park. He doesn't finish them, and I think it was the other week I was watching the game, and he missed 3 brilliant chances. He could get a hat-trick easy in that kind of game. So yeah, it's been a fun season for Motherwell, but St Mirren's did well. And shout out to Mark Harder if he's watching. I think he won't, but.
Yeah, I mean, James, it wasn't that long ago that Tony Fitzpatrick had said that St Mirren could be a top 6 club, and folk laughed at him. He might not be far off that because they are doing very well. They are sitting 7th. There's every chance this season they could break into that top 6.
Yeah, absolutely. And historically, St Mirren have done very well, in the Scottish top division. Even before the formation of the SPL and the Premier League, they were always there or thereabouts. And then they kind of went into the doldrums for quite a few years and looked like a lot of clubs as if they were going to go out of business. They've slowly but surely dragged themselves up by the bootstraps, so to speak. And they're now in a position where they're doing well. Certainly when they're at home, I'm not saying they're invincible, but when they're at home, they're a completely different proposition from when they play away. And a lot of that is down to how they have invested in players. Again, they've invested in players who are not stars, but are good quality professional footballers who do have a pride in what they're doing and do seem to have a bit of pride in the club. And that's important, And from the supporters' point of view, they see their players going out there and trying their best for 90 minutes or 96 minutes or 98 minutes, whatever length of time the game goes on for, and they'll appreciate that. And even though they might lose the game and you're going to be annoyed because your team loses, let's be honest, there is no football fan is not annoyed when their team doesn't win a game. But at least if they've played well and they've tried their best and they've given their all, you can appreciate it, And I've always had a wee soft spot for St Mirren.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I'm just actually looking at St Mirren's fixtures here, and actually they were beaten by Motherwell, ironically, at home in the first game of the season. But their form's been excellent at home. I think they're unbeaten since then, and they've obviously drawn with Hearts, they've drawn with Rangers, they beat Celtic. At home, St Mirren are making themselves a very difficult team to beat.
Yeah. I remember when they moved into that Skiggen, people said that, well, it's not going to be the same Love Streets, and I talk an iconic Skiggen, and it was I loved Love Street. Just because it was 2 minutes away from my house at the time. But I think they're beginning to I was going to say find a new home. That's stupid because they've been in there for 7-8 years now. But I mean, if they can keep that team together for like one more season or whatever, and the skill in the Scottish Cup, albeit it's against Celtic and away from home, but you never know. As well, maybe a different kettle of fish if the game was at the Samiza Skegum.
Yeah.
They call it now. They keep moving the names every week now. Yeah, I mean, a decent team, and I saw them the other week against Celtic. Celtic Park. Celtic didn't have their own way. They had to work for the victory, but that was due to St Mirren as well, you know. So yeah, but as I say, if they can keep that team together for like one more season and try and build on that, build kind of like momentum as well. But it'll be brilliant if St Mirren gets into Europe. Just imagine that teams would not have to have a team bus; they would just have to walk it up the motorway to the stadium.
Well, they have been in Europe, you know.
But not recently.
Not recently, no.
Yeah.
But I believe it was last century, but they have been in Europe.
Curtis Main playing against Barcelona, that'll be funny.
I still talk about Love Street anyway, Michael. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whenever I talk about St Mirren, I still refer to the ground as Love Street, and I don't suppose I'll ever change.
I think everybody does, but yeah.
Do you know what? Slightly off topic. We'll get back to Motherwell in a minute, but slightly off topic. But I was obviously brought up in the 80s, and I loved going to places like Love Street. I even loved like going to Celtic Park when it was like the old stadiums, and you were standing behind these barriers. Yeah. Obviously things changed because of Hillsborough and stuff. But I honestly loved, even at Tynecastle, like sitting in the shed and that watching Hearts. These were iconic stadiums, and I still look back at some of these games now and just think, wow, I actually do miss the terracing. I understand completely why that changed, but I really do miss the terracing.
Well, that's why they're kind of changing to that sort of rail seating setup. You know, like they have in Germany, where if they're playing like a big UEFA tournament, you know, the European Cup or the Champions League, if you want to call it that, or the UEFA Cup, then they have to be seated. But for their home league games, they move those seats back and they have a standing. And for me, I would much rather sit in the stand watching a game of football and go into a nice warm sort of area at half time for a pie and a cup of tea and all that kind of thing than be standing out in the cold, especially when we play the football in the winter time. But, you know, back in the day when I used to go when I was a young lad, you know, I used to love being in the crowd, you know, and you're squashed in, you know, and everybody's jumping up and down, you know, and it was just such a great atmosphere, you know. And sometimes when the fans are sitting, you don't really get the same atmosphere. That's why you have like the Green Brigade at Celtic, you know, and you've got the Motherwell people doing the same thing. You've got the same thing at Ibrox and that. You know, you've got groups of fans who have formed that kind of like core support, if you like, that are trying to get everybody else G'd up.
I think that's why everybody likes a third round of the Scottish Cup, James, because I mean you saw it last week against Darrow Aberdeen, but also you had a few games on the telly, you know, and you think, well, it's pouring the rain and people's actually watching outside. You know, that's what I love about watching the Scottish Cup, even the FA Cup as well. But obviously, my focus is on the Scottish Cup. I wonder why, but like you know, and you go to kind of like league rounds as well. A bit like tonight when Cove Rangers are playing Ayr United. Yeah.
In terms of, we're just finishing up on Motherwell tomorrow. Obviously, Michael, I think we probably thought, or certainly I and Dave did, that last week they might have had a bit of a shock against Arbroath. But I used the word last week, they were very, very professional and they got the job done.
Yeah, see, when I'm thinking about this, Graham, and I know we speak about this every week on the show now, because we've got a new feature on the show, James, to moan about Scottish football not being on the TV. I thought that would have been one of the games chosen to be on the TV because of the way Arbroath went last season and the way the run Motherwell was on as well. But yeah, I mean, so anyway, yeah, it was a decent performance. So it was a professional performance last week in Motherwell. But when we spoke about that game when you spoke about that game last week, Graham, on the show, there was a potential for a banana skin on that kind of game, you know, but Motherwell was quite professional and they got the job done.
And all the bananas were down in Darvel.
Boom, boom, yeah.
That's what you're on here, James, for the comedy value.
Well, you know, what can I say?
Just as well you said bananas, James.
Michael, no. It's a family show, as Graham said at the start.
I was going to say apples.
It was a Freud talking about bananas with the fraudulent slip up. There you go. So in terms of tomorrow, what's your prediction for tomorrow, St Mirren against Motherwell? James, I'll come to you.
I'm going to go 2-1 St Mirren.
Michael?
Yep, I will go. I would agree for the first time in my life with Mr. James Elliott.
I'm going to go 2-1. I'm going to go 2-1 St Mirren.
By the way, James, that's the last time, right?
We've got two games. We've got 2 games left. Let's talk about the big game at the weekend. It's Livingston against Hearts on Sunday. Of course, it's a big game. I'm hosting it. It's my show. So Livingston take on Hearts on Sunday at Almondvale. Livingston, Michael, could have been in a bit of a shot last week. They were 1-0 down to Stenhousemuir. Obviously, we saw the clip of David Martindale, who wasn't happy, and Livingston managed to win that game. But again, like St Mirren, at Almondvale, Livingston are a very difficult team to play against, as Hearts have found out, because we've lost it already this season.
I'm actually thinking about when you were saying that, like when people listen to David Martindale, he's a wee quiet guy, and you know he's dead professional about the game. And 2 minutes it was, but yeah, I mean, there we go. I'm going to have another dig at the TV, but just because I'm looking forward to seeing this game on the TV. But if it wasn't for the FA Cup, this game we're going to be on the TV. That's the reality of it. And I'm sorry I keep moaning about it, but I moan about everything. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the game. A lot of teams find it very difficult there, especially on that kind of plastic park that they've got at Livingston. Two good footballing teams as well, Graham. I'm looking forward to seeing. I won't get a chance to see this game actually, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the game. And Hearts is on a good run at the moment. Probably I've cussed them now. Sorry, Graham.
You had to say that, didn't you, and ruin it for me.
I had to say that, yeah, but I'm miles away from you, so I can say that. But yeah, I mean, and Livingston's a good football team at home and away. So it could be for an interesting game.
I was going to sing the home and away theme tune there, but I'm not going to bother. Before I come on to Hearts, James, just touching on Livingston, they have obviously been without Joel Nubley, who's been a huge miss for them. He's been a very good player. But I think we talk about this a lot. Now, if Jim Goodwin was to get sacked, it might not happen. Surely you would imagine that David Martindale would be in with a shout at that Aberdeen job, because the job that he's done at Livingston with very limited resources, it's a very, again, they don't have a massive fan base, but David Martindale is a very, very good manager.
You would think so, but I would doubt it very much. If he was to go to Aberdeen, I would think Aberdeen would be looking to get somebody, shall we say, bigger in terms of, name than David Martindale. He has done a super job with Livingston, you can't deny that. But I don't think Aberdeen would go for him. It would be a good move if they did, because I think he could probably go up there and shake a few of them players up, and get them to actually play. Because sometimes when you watch the Aberdeen players, as Dave was saying earlier, the body language, if you look at the body language, that it's like, I'm picking up a pea packet here, I don't really have to bother. And that's not how it should be. So yeah, he probably could be a good candidate, but I really don't think that's what will happen.
Michael, I think Livingston always punch above their weight. Again, they're sitting fourth. which for a team like Livingston, as I've just talked about, the lack of the fan base, they don't have a lot of funds. For Livingston to be sitting fourth, I think they've had a fantastic season so far.
I've just got this. If you ask a Livingston fan this, I don't think they actually care about the fan base. Gunners are doing well on the park. They've got a good team. And as I say, you know what you're going to get with Livingston as well. I mean, people said that when Lyndon Dykes went away, well, Livingston have a goal scorer. They're kind of a bit like well, I can't think of a team now, but they keep grinding players out into a good team. They're very consistent as well, Graham. You know, they're not kind of they don't go through a bag spell like 7 games getting beat. Because I remember, what was it? David Martindale got the job at first. They won, what was it, 12 games or something back to back, and that was amazing, especially for a small team like Livingston. No disrespect to any Livingston fans, but I think, like, if you ask any Liverpool fan, they don't care about the fan base, or they don't care about this and that. They're honest, they keep winning on the park and be successful as well. And yeah, that would be a brilliant story as well, you know. But going back to what you were saying about, if Jim Goodwin does get his P45 tomorrow, well, David Martindale will get the job. And I've been saying this, Keith, for weeks on the show, Graham, that I think David Martindale would have been away only because he's at Livingston. People doesn't look at Livingston in the same light as they do, like, a kind of bigger team, if you know what I mean, and in the top 6 of the tables as well. But I think it's a shame because it's done a hell of a decent job at Liverpool over the past couple of seasons. But I think that's what it is. I think it's because he's doing well at Livingston. People doesn't focus on Livingston as much as they would do a kind of a top flight kind of not top flight, but top 6 team, if that kind of makes sense.
I think as well they have a great knack at Livingston. I don't know who it is that does it, but from a recruitment point of view, they do really well. As Michael said, when Lyndon Dykes left, there was a lot of sort of dubiety about who was going to get the goals for them, and they brought people in to do that. And I think from David Martindale's point of view, he's obviously a very good man manager as well, because a lot of these players that they bring in are from sort of like the lower leagues down in England, or whose careers have sort of stalled in England, and then they come up to Livingston, and he obviously gets that bit extra out of them, which kind of proves what a decent manager he actually is.
I mean, he must have like a good network now, James, because they've got Chris Gilbert there at Livingston, and did you not have John Hartson there 2 seasons ago as well as one of the coaches as well? So it's his stock is high, but as I say, it's my personal opinion is I think it's because it's Livingston, and if it was another team, we would get other jobs at the moment. But people should disagree with me if you want, but I think it's because it's back to Livingston and they haven't got a fan base or whatever. But yeah, but I mean, he doesn't care, and he doesn't care after the interviews as well, because he goes out and shouts at his players. I wouldn't let you go home without a fist supper to him one night,
Yeah, I mean, James, I think Sunday's a big game, obviously for Hearts, but in terms of Livingston, they are 7 points behind Hearts. If they win on Sunday, they knock that down, and they've got a game in hand. So that's a very big game for them on Sunday.
Yeah, it's. I think it's going to be a really interesting game because you've got 2 teams that are, relatively speaking, bang in form. It's going to be a ground that is difficult to play at. because of the plastic pitch, etc. However, I will qualify that by saying that as a professional footballer, it shouldn't really matter to you, because most of the clubs now have the ability or somewhere that they can go and train on a plastic pitch. So you can't really say, you know, oh, Livingston have got an advantage because they're playing on that every other week. But you can go out there and you can train on a plastic pitch somewhere else. But it's going to be an interesting game from not just a footballing perspective, but from the management point of view as well. You know, I think you've got two very different managers in terms of characteristics. So I think it's going to be a cracker of a game.
Michael, in terms of Hearts, we're on a 9-game unbeaten run. Woohoo! Not that I'm biased. We are unbeaten since the World Cup break. Obviously, we've just come off the back of a derby victory, again, natural order, from last week. This is going to be a big game for Hearts. Can you tell I'm biased? I'm so professional. This is going to be a really huge game for Hearts. For me, again, I've commented on this before. For me, probably the most improved player at Hearts just now, and I've slated them before, is Toby Sibbick. Last week against Hibs, he was outstanding and then scores that goal from defence. He wouldn't have done that a while ago. And there's obviously been a lot of talk about him potentially leaving for Blackpool. I know that there was a club statement yesterday. Mick McCarthy came out and said that Blackpool hadn't made a bid. Hearts came out and said, yes, there has. Hearts at the moment are on a very, very good run of form. And Robin Nielsen has been very impressive so far.
When you were asking me that question, don't worry, I was listening to you. But deep down, I was thinking, well, out with Celtic and Rangers, I can't remember a team that's had, you can rhyme off about 4 or 5 or even 6 goal scorers in their team. You know, the goals are coming from everywhere at the moment. And, and I don't think you're biased at all, Grim. Maybe just a wee bit.
To be honest, as much as Lawrence Shanklin's our top scorer, my favourite goal scorer is penalties. I love them. They're great.
Yeah, but they've got goal scorers all over the park, you know, and Andy Halliday, your favourite person, Graham, Robert Snodgrass, Gary Mackay-Stevens. He's not getting the game a lot at the moment.
He's been out for about 6 months.
Oh, yeah, well, maybe that's why he's not scoring goals in. You can tell I pay attention to Hearts very often. But no, I mean, out with that, I mean, they've got goal scorers. And then also at the back, you've got a safe pair of hands when Craig Gordon was in. It's a shame. Hope he comes back next season. But, I mean, it's usually when the goalkeeper goes out the team, you're like that. Well, I wonder if this goalkeeper's going to be a bit iffy or whatever, but it's just a smooth replacement because it's like business as usual with Zanger Clark. He's a brilliant goalkeeper for St Johnstone, and he made a few good saves last week against Hibs at the game as well. So yeah, I've been impressed with Hearts, and hopefully. I'm going to see on Twitter, #1 fan club, Robin Nielsen, but as of yet, Graham, I've not saw one. I might say one up tonight.
That will be trending very soon, trust me. So, predictions for Sunday, Livingston against Hearts, James?
Ooh, it's a toughie. I'm going to go 2-1 Hearts.
Michael?
2-1 Hearts, yeah. So...
You're just copying me, Michael.
No, I was going to say 2 each, right? But I thought Graham's going to give me the big eye, and
you can be honest on this show.
Okay, good for
but
you.
Just remember, I've got my hand on that mute button.
Yeah, so far. Good for you, Graham. I'll say 3-1 Hearts.
Right, I'm going 6-0 Hearts. Lawrence Shankland 6 penalties. No, I'm not. I'm going to go 2-1 Hearts. It'll be a tough game. I'm going to go 2-1 Hearts. The last game of the weekend is at Tannadice. That's a 4 o'clock kickoff, and it's Dundee United against Celtic. The last time Celtic played at Tannadice, it finished 9-0 to Celtic. James, I'm going to come to you first on this. I don't think that will be the same this time. Celtic have strengthened. I'm probably going to get this name totally wrong, but they have signed the South Korean international striker Hyungu Oh on a 5-year deal. 21-year-old from K-League One club Suwon Samsung Blue Wings. Another striker, obviously Giakoumakis is leaving, a potentially very good signing for Celtic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was seeing something on Twitter the other day. Some Celtic fans are opting for it's magic. So whenever the boy scores a goal, but yeah, I don't know if he'll play tomorrow or not. Although
I would hope not, because the game's on Sunday.
well, Sunday, I did read that he was very keen to make his debut in the Dundee United game. So he may come on as a substitute or something. I don't know, but it definitely won't be the same as the 9-0 game. You know, it'll be 10 this time.
I love that honesty. Michael, I mean, we've talked numerous times about the fact that Celtic are relentless and they don't stop. Celtic now have just strengthened even further. There's still a few days left. They might strengthen again. You've got to again imagine that Celtic on Sunday are going to be far too strong for United, although United have improved.
I've heard the new guy has got a new nickname. But if you're in the know, you would know that. So yeah, it's
Can you hear that tumbleweed that's just gone across my screen?
I thought you didn't get the joke. That the last time Celtic was up there, I was over in Greece and it was nice and hot. But I won't be nice and hot on Sunday because I'm going up to Tara-Dice for a wonderful time for a game, 4 o'clock on the Sunday. But no, I won't be another 9-hour shot. I think it will be a very tight game. Dundee United a good team, up and down scene, you would say. But yeah, I mean, you're right. In terms of Celtic, like, I mean, I've said this to you before, Graham, no matter who Celtic bring in, you don't notice who's went out the team because that they've got that quality on the park. I mean, you know, Greg Taylor was out the team for not the Morton game, but the game before that, the St Mirren game kind of thing, and you didn't notice it because some guy just came in, done his job, a professional job, got the job done. So I think that, and fun enough, I was speaking to my old man about this the other week as well, that I'm not being a bit snobby here, but you know, if Celtic didn't bring in anybody in this wing, obviously they would have to bring in somebody now. But if they didn't bring anyone in, I wasn't too bothered because I think Celtic's got strength and depth all over the park. You know, we can ask Celtic can actually play with our goalkeeper at the moment. You know. As well, but yeah, I mean, but in terms of Sunday's game, yeah, it's going to be a good game. Dundee, like I like going up to Tara-Dice. It's a nice game as well. Yeah, it should be a good game. Celtic will win, but they'll have to work hard for the victory. Like Rangers got another week, Graham, because remember we were on the show and it was 0-0 and Dundee like Sugar had a penalty before half time, and they had a few good chances in that first half as well. Rangers won, 2-0 that game as well. So I think it will be the same approach by Dundee United against Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, James, Dundee United did beat Stirling University last week. It maybe wasn't a great performance, but when they come against Celtic, I think Liam Fox has done a good job. But you're up against a team that, you know, Celtic are just so dominant. If you're a Dundee United fan, what would you be expecting on Sunday from your team?
I'd be expecting similar to what happened in the last game between the teams when they were at Celtic Park. And Dundee United were within a couple of minutes of securing a draw. But then 2 very late goals get the victory for Celtic. As a Dundee United fan, I would be demanding at the very least that. But again, I just think Celtic, they've strengthened, as we've said before, in the window. They've lost some players that were very good players. but weren't getting into the team. So that tells you a lot about the players that were getting into the team. But I think Celtic will just be a wee bit too strong again for Dundee United, and I don't really think it'll be 10-0. I was just making a joke with that one.
Michael, we spoke not that long ago, probably a few weeks ago, about the fact that we didn't think, although he was scoring goals, that Kyogo was maybe at his sharpest. He's looking a lot sharper now, I think, in the games that I've seen him.
Yeah, I think I was a bit harsh on Kyogo a few weeks ago, actually, about what I was saying to you about when he was injured at St Johnstone back in Boxing Day, that it wasn't being the same player as than he was. But then I was watching another podcast. I can't believe I was watching another podcast on the show, but there you go. I'm not presenting, so I can get away with it tonight. They were saying that, and they said that, like, a lot of people have been giving Kyogo stick because he's not been the same player since that injury, or since his first game for Celtic when they signed. But he's still scoring goals, you know, and I'm not going to compare him to Henrik Larsson, because obviously nobody can compare people to Larsson. But, like, I mean, every game, Larsson did get played well every game, but he still put the ball in the back of the net, you know. And but I think if you ask Celtic fans, they wouldn't care if Kyogo played well for 15 minutes or 50 minutes or 98 minutes, as long as he puts the ball in the back of the net, because that's what he gets. That's what he's there to get paid for, and to please the fans at the end of the day. But I kind of like Andrei Postecoglou's press conference. I watched it today before I came on, and, like, he's one of these guys, and I know I said this to Graham on the show, and I've not said to James, but I'll say to him now that he's one of these guys that you would like to meet down the pub and just have a conversation, not about football, just about anything, because I think he's got a view on, you know, everything and anything, but it doesn't get carried away as well. I think the only time I saw him animated was at that time, saw the game at Tynecastle when VR got introduced as well, and it was a bit annoying, and it gave the ref a round of applause, you know, sarcastically for not giving that obvious penalty. No, he's very calm, and he's very kind of like manana, not manana. Why did I say that? Because I can't.
Does he not play for Celtic?
Yeah, why did I say that?
He did. Big Victor.
Yeah, exactly. But he's very cool, and he's very kind of, you know, he doesn't get too carried away. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be the David Martindale when he goes in the dressing room and gets a player a rocket or maybe something else. But, you know, he speaks well to the media as well, you know, and that's what you want compared to other managers. It gives rants and, you know, and stuff like that. It's a bit like what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, James, one player that isn't at Celtic anymore, and it's not a massive shock, is Josef Juranovic. Celtic got a good deal out of him. He had a very good time at Celtic, but probably best for both that he's moved on now.
For me personally, I would have preferred that he stayed. I was a big fan of Juranovic from day one. He's very adaptable. He can play on the left, he can play on the right. And obviously, when Greg Taylor was out for a while last year, Juranovic was on the left, and Tony Ralston came in on the right. But Tony Ralston's been injured for a lot of this season, so that's why whenever Greg Taylor's not been playing, the boy Bernaby's been getting an opportunity, and I've got a lot of time for him. You know, he's still kind of finding his feet, I think, a little bit at Celtic. But the last couple of games where he has played, I've been, you know, quite impressed by him. So, yeah, look, players come and players go at football clubs, right? Let's be honest about it. And we all have our favourites, and we get a bit disappointed when they leave, or we get quite elated if they decide to stay a bit longer. Modern football, players tend not to stay at the same club for any great length of time. They move on. And why not, But I thought Juranovic potentially could have been at Celtic for quite a long time. But I can completely understand why, he's moved on. I was kind of surprised where he's gone, if I'm being honest. I honestly thought he would have ended up in the Premier League down south, but there you go.
Yeah, so let's get predictions for Sunday, Dundee United against Celtic. Michael, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, so I will go 3-0 Celtic.
James?
Oh, yeah, I'll completely agree with Michael, not.
Come on.
I think it'll be 4-0.
I'm going to go 2-0 Celtic. It'll be a tough game, but I think Stephen Fletcher's going to be a big influence for United. He's been very impressive, but I think Celtic will win. We've got 10 minutes to go. Let's touch on the Championship. I keep on saying this, one of the best leagues in Scotland. Tonight, as Michael's mentioned, it's Cove Rangers against Ayr United. Cove sitting in 8th, Ayr United sitting in 2nd. They are 4 points off Queen's Park, who are sitting top of the league. Michael, it's a big game this for Ayr United. If they can go a point behind, it'll put massive pressure on Queen's Park tomorrow, who have a big game, the game of the day, against Dundee at Dens Park.
Yeah, no, obviously I've not saw a lot of these teams this season, Graham. I've only saw Ayr United only because they've been on the TV, and I quite like the striker that they've got. I don't know his name. It's
Akinyemi.
Yeah, that's his name. He scored a few goals this season. He'll probably no score tonight, by the way. But yeah, I've been very impressed by Ayr United. I've been actually, I know ever since we started the show, Graham, we've been talking about the Championship, and I've been quite surprised at the standard of the Championship as well, even Morton as well. Obviously I saw Morton last week against Celtic, but I've also saw them over the past couple of Fridays that they've been on the telly as well. So yeah, I mean, even if 3 points, that's what Ayr United fans would be going up for. But I don't think if they get a point, I don't think they'd be too disappointed with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, James, Paul Hartley came back to Scottish football. He's taken over at Cove. Obviously, Paul Hartley, for me, is an absolute legend at Hearts. Not had the best of starts at Cove. They are at home tonight. It's got to give them a massive chance. But as I say, they are sitting 8th. It's a big game for them as well tonight.
I think it's an absolute must win for Cove tonight. Just purely from the point of view of giving the club a wee bit of belief again. They've not been doing too well. Obviously, they changed managers mid-season, which is never always a great thing. And I think a lot of people kind of thought when Paul Hartley was going back there that it was going to be a case that, everything was going to instantly go back to what it was like when he was there previously. And there was a little bit of surprise, shall we say, that it didn't. But do you know what? I think the honest men might be just a wee bit too much. I think, I keep saying this, but I mean, back in the day, last century, Ayr United in the early part of the 20th century in the Scottish top division, the Division 1, were regular challengers with the likes of Celtic and Rangers, And now the teams that are in the Championship, part of the reason for them being so competitive is that there's not a lot of difference in what they can afford to do financially. So that the players that they have are all kind of round about the same sort of level, the same sort of abilities. Whereas within the Premier League, Celtic and to a lesser extent Rangers can afford to bring in that little bit better quality than the other teams in the division have. So that kind of makes them go a bit further and makes them, a bit harder to beat. Whereas in the Championship, they've all roughly got pretty much the same kind of budgets. So it makes for a much more interesting league. I think if the teams in the Scottish Premier League were all kind of in the same sort of ballpark when it came to finances, it would probably be a bit more competitive than, say, Celtic or Rangers winning it every year.
Yeah, I'll touch on the games tomorrow. It's Dundee against Queen's Park, a massive game at Dens Park. That Morton against Arbroath, Partick against Hamilton, and Wraith against Inverness. Before I move on for the Championship, we've got 5 minutes to go. Michael, that game at Dens Park is huge. Now, I said to Dave last week, like I did with Arbroath, I wanted Arbroath to come up. If Queen's Park could come up, that would be a huge story in Scottish football.
I think like that would be a bigger story than Arbroath coming up, Graham. Considering, that they was it amateur a few years ago, and like they were only paying players, I don't know, about £50 a week or something. I'm just kind of guessing that. But yeah, I think it would be a brilliant achievement for them. They've got a lot of I think is it Witty Hockey? It's like pumping lots of money into them as well. So they've got money behind them, and money's not the be all and end all. It kind of helps you as well. But there you go. We've got another big team in Glasgow apart from Celtic, Rangers, and Partick Thistle. But listen, it would be a brilliant achievement for Queen's Park.
James, I've heard a lot of folks say, it's got similarities with Gretna. I disagree, because Gretna was all about one person's money. This for me is very different. I think Queen's Park are doing it the right way.
Plus, also, to a certain extent, Willie Hockey's got more of a football background than the guy who took Gretna up. It was very much an ego type thing, from what I can remember. And it was an incredible journey, the Gretna thing. It was an incredible journey, but it was a house of cards. It was always going to come crashing down at some point. But Queen's Park, they've been around for a very, very, very long time. And I would absolutely agree with you, Graham. I would love to see them making it into the Premier League.
I think the only difference with that, James, is Gretna didn't have much of a fan base. I'm not sure about Queen's Park, but remember, Gretna played all the home games at Fir Park, so it wasn't a kind of home game. Whereas Queen's Park, if they get into a league, I think, have they moved into Leicester-Hampton yet? So that they've got their own ski game as well.
It kind of depends still, who they're going to play. If they think they're going to get a really good crowd, they'll move it into the main stadium. But most of their games they'll play at Leicester-Hampton, just purely because, as you say, it's not like there's going to be like 20, 30,000 there, on a kind of consistent basis. But, if they did get up into the Premier League, and you had Celtic and Rangers, Aberdeen, Hearts, then you would probably see them playing in the big stadium. And it's just around the corner for me as well.
We've got a couple of minutes to go, and I just want to touch very quickly on the Australian Open, which is taking place this weekend. The final is 9-time champion Novak Djokovic against Stefanos Tsitsipas. Now, this guy...
Stefanos Tsitsipas, did you say there?
I was very close to saying something else, but I didn't. Djokovic beat Tommy Paul. Tsitsipas beat Karen Khachanov of Russia. I mean, we talk about Djokovic all the time, Michael, but Djokovic is just an absolute machine, and nobody has beaten him in Melbourne since 2018. It's an incredible record.
Yeah, let's hope Tsitsipas doesn't go to the toilet before the game.
You try to say that then.
You're the presenter. You're inviting me on the show. I've not really been watching the Australian Open, obviously, because it's on at funny times and we are sleeping and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good game. You never know, it's a one-off game. That's what we were talking about football earlier on. Anything could happen, Glenn, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, James, Djokovic, as I said, we talk about Federer, we talk about Sampras, but Djokovic is just such an unbelievable player. And you're talking about like Andy Murray is going up against these guys, and it is so difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be honest, there was a time not so long ago where Andy Murray was not quite on a par with Federer and Djokovic, but he was pretty close. Obviously, had his injury issues and all the rest of it, and he's sort of slipped back. But it did look a little bit like he might be going to do something good at the tournament this year. I mean, there was that game just the other day there when it finished like at 5:30 in the morning or something like that. Madness, absolute madness. But yeah, Djokovic, I really don't see anybody other than him winning it.
Yeah, absolutely. We are running out of time. It's been a very busy show. Steve B is on after us at 7 o'clock. We will hopefully be back on Sunday where we'll talk about the games from the weekend. We are absolutely going to be back on Tuesday for our special transfer window show, which I'm looking forward to. You can catch James Elliott tomorrow on Indie Live Radio. He will be on with his big Saturday show at 10 till 12, so tune in for that. It's been a great show again. Thank you to Dave, who disappeared again off the face of the planet. Don't know where he's probably sleeping. Thank you again to Michael, and also thank you again to James for joining me. We shall see you again later on. Bye-bye.